Well, this video is going to get me into some trouble from both sides, and that's completely fine with me because the subject of today's video is something I've been seeing over and over again, and I honestly can't help but to throw my 2 cents in here. While the majority of my videos are dissections of YouTubers, this is going to be a little bit different. It's going to be a dissection of the stigma and 2 opposing sides of opinions on a YouTuber. Most importantly, it's going to be an opinion piece, so for someone who hasn't really done any of those on their channel before, the potential backlash can be a little bit daunting, but I think this is important, so here we go. I have a confession to make. I kind of like TikTok. I don't go scrolling through it for hours or anything like that, but I indulge myself a little bit every day. If that's enough for you to click off of the video, I completely understand and can only beg for your forgiveness. For those of you who are still here, I came across a really interesting video or group of videos that piqued my interest significantly. It's a bunch of scrawny white kids laughing hysterically about how they are so lucky that they turned out to be liberal after going through a time in their lives where they watched certain people. Although there were many different names scattered throughout the different videos, such as Jordan Peterson, iDubbbz, and Ben Shapiro, the main names that I constantly saw popping up were Leafy is Here and Filthy Frank. First of all, I have a strong disdain for Leafy is Here as much as the next person, and comparing the dude talking into a shitty $60 microphone with CSGO surf gameplay on the screen to a guy who literally rented out a helicopter for one of his videos and put constant effort into an actual traceable lore to the channel is just asinine. The thing that surprised me more, however, was to see so many people have this opinion of Filthy Frank. But at the same time, I also wasn't surprised. I don't think that it's a controversial take to say that Filthy Frank is literally the most misunderstood character to ever grace the platform. Notice how I said character, right? Honestly, I could end this video by saying, go look at the about section of his channel, but that would be a little too premature for my taste. No, I'm here to talk about this poor man and how the legacy he's left behind has been completely torn to shreds by both opposing sides. You see, there's the pro-Frank side, who worship him as a god and have taken everything that he's ever said in his videos to their grave, and their personalities practically thrive off of it to this very day. Then there's the anti-Frank side, who believe that he is toxic and one of the worst influencers on the planet, yet most of them seem to be ex-supporters, so keep that in mind. A little while ago, I mentioned that I could end the video and essentially the whole debate going on about the topic by telling you to look at the about section of his channel. So why don't we do that now? It reads, Filthy Frank is the embodiment of everything a person should not be. He's anti-PC, anti-social, and anti-couth. He behaves and reacts excessively to everything expressly to highlight the ridiculousness of racism, misogyny, legalism, injustice, ignorance, and other social blights. He also sets an example to show how easy it is in the social media for any zany material to gain traction/followings by simply sharing unsavory opinions and joking about topics many find offensive. There's no denying the show is terribly offensive, but this terrible offensiveness is a deliberate and unapologetic parody of the whole social media machine and a reflection of the human microcosm that social media is. If anybody in the generation of people who follow Filthy Frank ever took their time to read anything, this whole debate and debacle would be over by now. The guy literally, in one paragraph, has dismantled the integrity of both sides in one fell swoop. So, which side should we tackle first? I mean, I hate both equally, so I guess I'll go for the target that's much easier and that I have far less to say about, which would be the Frank cultists. You've definitely seen them before, the folks who are in the comment section of Joji videos saying things like, "You can tell that Frank is trying to escape from him in this interview," as if it is a completely aware and separate identity that George has repressed. What they do not realize, however, is that they are more than likely single-handedly the reason that he stopped doing the character in the first place. And when I brought this up to one of my friends, they got super defensive and told me that it didn't seem right that I was, and I quote, victim blaming the fans who supported his content and made him who he was in the first place. Now, that may sound fine on the surface, but the big issue is that they aren't supporting the content in the way that it is meant to be supported. For example, if you watched Jojo Rabbit and what you took away from it is how interesting and relatable the Nazis were in this film, you are supporting the content in the wrong way. In comparison, if you are supporting the content because you have a vitriolic hate towards feminists, vegans, and weeaboos, and not because it is some of the best parody content of the 21st century that is essentially shitting on people like yourself, you are not only unintentionally making a fool of yourself, but you are also not supporting the content in the way that it is meant to be supported. That's why the videos including both Leafy and Frank as similar entities was so frustrating to me, because Frank was making fun of what Leafy actually was. It would be like putting Sacha Baron Cohen in the same category as Trump, but we'll get to that later. So if there are any people in the category that I just discussed still here after I berated your viewpoints and kind of told you you're watching your favorite creator wrong, I have a question for you. Why do you think he stopped? The obvious answer is that it was to pursue his music career that turned out to be insanely successful, but what made him lose passion for his initial project of Filthy Frank? If you ask his fans, it's this elusive question that they've never really received any closure on and drives them nutty to this day. But if you ask me, it's literally stated in a video that he released in 2014 called Filthy Frank Exposes Himself. Long story short, George had been having stress-induced seizures to the point where he was hospitalized, and the majority of the stress was due to this.
Because a lot of the stress came from the idea that you guys don't realize that I exist as well as a human. There's Frank, there's Pink Guy, there's Salamander Man. There are all these wonderful fuckers living here, but then there's me as well. And people not knowing that I existed and that it was just these guys really gave me a lot of stress, because I'm a normal person, just like the rest of you guys.
In other words, these characters are exactly that. Characters. They are meant to entertain and be absurd and not be idolized by edgy teenagers who want to shit on everybody. So his fanbase took action, and as any healthy and compassionate group of people would do, they decided to not support his decision whatsoever and ignore everything he had said, so much so that he took the video off of his channel very soon after. But yeah, I can't imagine why he would ever want to leave that wonderful environment, right? And the thing that is even more insane is that he gave his audience time to grow as he continued making videos into late 2017. That means that for a whopping 3 years, he didn't halt anything as he was entitled to, but instead he continued giving his audience a chance to develop and understand the real-world ramifications of how they were interpreting and handling his channel and characters. And they simply never did. Honestly, I can't explain why he made his decision any more succinctly than that, so I think that it's time for me to move on to the other side of the argument, which is the people who treat Filthy Frank as someone on the same level of Leafy's here and treat him as a conservative divining rod. Remember when I brought up Sacha Baron Cohen earlier in this video? Well, I will be bringing it to pertinence now. Arguably the most popular character that he has ever played, unless you are just like a massive Ali G fan, is Borat, a satirical figure representing a Middle Eastern journalist from Kazakhstan who takes the mick out of every single culture and religion that exists or has ever existed. The key thing about Borat is that almost every single one of my friends who fall into this anti-Frank group are very big fans of Borat. And if you were to look at a movie reviewing site like Letterboxd, which is very liberal in its nature, they seem to agree with this sentiment. To this I say, you can't have both. You can't support one entity of completely clear satire and completely toss aside the other that is very similar just because the people who support the latter entity aren't particularly aware of the intention of said entity. Have you ever listened to K-pop before? Well, I have, and I have to say, it's not particularly that bad, which came as a surprise to me because of how much of a bad stigma it seemed to be surrounded by. And why does it have that stigma, do you ask? Well, because the stands of the genre are generally considered toxic and are said to not allow anyone to enjoy the music unless it is the way that they enjoy it. You already see the comparison that I'm attempting to make. The same thing goes for film bros and movies like Pulp Fiction, Scott Pilgrim, and Fight Club. Just because the majority of the fan base of something is toxic and misrepresents the actual entity itself doesn't mean that said entity should be looked at through that lens and not the way in which it was actually intended to be looked at. Plus, to the people who are making these aforementioned TikToks from misinterpreting the intention of the source material that Frank provides and then going on to say that you enjoyed watching it in high school, you're kind of admitting, using your own words, that you were a racist anti-SJW in high school, and I am somebody who doesn't believe that being racist is a fucking phase. You completely missed the point that Filthy Frank wasn't feeding you your opinions. He was showing you how ridiculous the opinions that you took to heart actually were, and laughing at how gullible and easy to influence you were. So, you're essentially outing yourself as someone who isn't able to form their own opinion and molds their personality around the media they watch, which is something that you generally cite as cringy for the opposing side. All I'm saying is, you seem to lack applying the same criticism that you do to the opposing side to yourself, which shows an intense lack of self-awareness. I mean, you are from the same generation that made Ratatouille the musical, so in all reality, what can I expect? As someone who enjoys people who elevate their comedy to the next level, I've been pretty pissed off at one of my favorite content creators being used as a tool to prove a point on both sides of the political spectrum, and not for his actual purpose, which is to take the mick out of the idea of sensationalism and internet culture. So I finally said something about it in the hopes that maybe, just maybe, this can set the perception of Filthy Frank back on the right track as one of the most brilliant satirical acts of the 21st century. Thank you guys so much for watching the video. Thank you for bearing with me through this whole entire thing. I know it's a much different source of content than what I usually put out. It's less informative and more opinion based, but it's something that I've been seeing a lot of. And not only on TikTok, but just in general on YouTube, and I want to have a talk about it. So thank you very much. If you like the video, please subscribe. It would be amazing to get that support going again. I really appreciate everyone who has been, and I look forward to making more content for all of you guys. Thank you to our patron, Weston Kentucky, and our producer, AJ Ford. If you would like to join the ranks of our Patreon, which has some pretty interesting and nifty perks, check the description. We also have our Twitter, Twitch, and Spotify podcast down there for you guys if you want to check those out. Thank you so much for watching once again, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Enjoy your week, and as always, goodbye.